Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I post reviews as well as retrospectives of some of my favorite movies a few times a week. Later this week, I'll be dropping a review for Killers of the Flower Moon. I finally found 4 hours of free time, which is just a miracle for a father of a young kid. The next installment of my MCU retrospective series, Thor, will premiere Thursday night, so keep an eye out for that as well. Before we get started, please remember to like, share, subscribe, comment down below, and most importantly, tell your friends. Now, let's dive into Reacher Season 2. Alan Ritchson is back in full Jack Reacher form, bigger, goofier, and more violent than ever. And I'm disappointed to say that Season 2 doesn't surpass or even rival Season 1. The action is still visceral and ridiculous, the storyline is intriguing and engaging, but far too complex for its own good. This go round, we are introduced to more of Reacher's former unit. Neely returns in a more prominent role, and Sean Sipos and Serinda Swan are added to the cast as Carla Dixon and David O'Donnell, respectively. We follow that team of four as they chase down leads of corporate corruption and greedy weapons contracts to find the party responsible for murdering their former brothers in arms. And who is this party responsible? That would be head of New Age Security, Shane Langston, played by Terminator 2's own Robert Patrick. Season 2 of Reacher is certainly no dud. There is a lot of enjoyment to find in this 8-episode trek. Ritchson continues to shine as the titular brawler, barreling his way through any obstacle that stands between him and revenge. Robert Patrick is definitely an improvement over Season 1's Bruce McGill as the main antagonist. Casting a more well-known and accomplished actor like Patrick is a step in the right direction for this series as a whole. I hope it continues that trajectory going forward, because Ritchson deserves to face off against heavy-hitting acting talent. The storyline this season is way more extensive and elaborate, which has its strengths but also has its weaknesses. The strengths being the utilization of multiple locations, glimpses into Reacher's military past, and a more serious world-threatening plot. However, this also led to some serious negatives in the convoluted way that the plot came together and the overabundance of additional characters. More times than not, this season bites off way more than it can chew. As Reacher and his crew hunt down Langston, they uncover ancillary conspiracies involving AM, a mercenary hired by Langston, and Malcolm Lavoie, a senator responsible with pushing through funding for New Age's newest defense system. Although these additional threads attempt to flesh out Season 2's story, they only dilute the main focus of the plot. In the finale, all three threads never quite come together in a satisfying way, and you're left with a more convoluted affair compared to the smaller, tightly knit diegesis of Season 1. Outside of these two sub-villains, we're also introduced to Reacher's Special Investigators Unit from his heyday serving in the US Army. The majority of this outfit is only presented through brief flashbacks over the course of the season, and besides the three who accompany Reacher on his mission in the present day, we don't really get to know much of these characters as they're assassinated off-screen by Langston and his goons in an attempt to cover up their failures. I found the story this season more difficult to follow because I found myself having to research character names as they were being discussed on screen because we just don't get enough time with these characters for them to make a substantial impact. Along with the expanded cast, the majority of these actors just don't quite even out to the same level of skill as Ritchson, Patrick, or even Dominic Lombardozzi, who I'll mention shortly. The talent that rounds out the crew this year leaves a lot to be desired. Don't get me wrong, Serinda Swan is a talented actress, and the credibility of her intimate relationship with Reacher is a high point this year. But there were so many instances where it felt like she was giving the performance of a daytime soap regular. I don't necessarily hold her and the rest of the cast entirely accountable for this issue, because I think a lot of the fault falls onto the writers. After all, the biggest drawback of this season for me was its writing, a discouraging retreat from the penmanship of season 1. Too many times I found myself reflecting on the dialogue and the story beats and comparing them to a bad network TV series from the mid-2000s era. I'm not sure what happened either, because the same writers from season 1 returned, but I sensed myself getting frustrated over and over because the dialogue was so exposition heavy, or just corny, or just blatantly unnecessary to the degree where it didn't complement the action and its characters, and in fact it ultimately hindered them. One new character I did find compelling this season was Dominic Lombardozzi's guy Russo, a by-the-book, honorable NYPD homicide detective investigating the murder of one of Reacher's unit members. He butts heads with Reacher and his team on multiple occasions, and they learn to trust in one another and compromise to bring their common foe to justice. Lombardozzi plays this character so matter-of-factly and convincingly that your heart breaks when he's gunned down by Langston's assassins, protecting an innocent child. Another high point of this season was the action. The action in this season is amplified to a new level. It remains the standout of the show. Sure, at times it can seem over the top, bombastic, and absurd, but it mirrors who this character is. Reacher is a wrecking ball of a human, and he makes every confrontation believable. Portions of the show that don't seem as plausible are balanced out by Reacher's inability to perform certain functions. In one such scene, Reacher and his team are fired upon at a funeral. Reacher himself attempts to pursue the perpetrators on foot to no avail, bumbling along like an oversized clown. It's then that as a viewer you realize that even though this hulking giant may be able to kick and punch his way into and through any barrier, that even he has his limits. You buy into the fact that a man this size certainly wouldn't be a proficient sprinter. And all that scene and the others like it do are add accreditation to the unimaginable feats that this man accomplishes. All in all, Reacher's second outing persists in its enjoyment, yet it doesn't reach the apex of season 1. Richardson remains fully committed to this character, commanding every scene he's in. And while the action escalates to preposterous and captivating levels, it's not enough to save the subpar supporting performances, the tangled narrative, or the shaky dialogue. Much of this season left me yearning for the simpler, more grounded run of the first season. I found myself missing the mysterious nomadic Reacher we saw prior, and I hope season 3 can get back to those roots. Because sometimes, simpler is just better.